Manuel, come over. Manuel, everyone. Manuel is a wonderful developer focused on accessibility for many, many years now, I think. And I really like to see people who care. Whatever it is that you're working on. Maybe you really care about that semicolon in JavaScript. I like you, right? Not? Okay, maybe not. But I do like people who care about accessibility and people who care about design, like deeply, deeply care. And that's always wonderful to hear and see. And I mean, I don't know what to say. Manuel has an incredible number of articles and blogs and speaking and workshopping and working and writing and all of that. And I'm just really, really happy to have him with us, maybe teaching us a few new things or old things that we might need to know in order to design and build slightly better and maybe more accessible experiences. So with this, please give a warm round of applause to our dear beloved friend Manuel MATUZOVIĆ.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for being here, for joining me for my talk. You can hear me, and I hope that you can hear audio now. I'm so sorry for the issues with the audio, but I hope you got it. At least, you know, there were subtitles. I love how disgusted Dick's face was when he said not alphabetical. In the movie High Fidelity, based on the book with the same title, Rob, played by John Cusack, reflects on his personal life by reorganizing his record collection. And I did a similar thing recently, where I reflected on my professional life. I didn't reorganize my record collection, but I put the steps that I took in my career and in my development as a CSS developer on a timeline. And this resulted in a talk called "That's Not How I Wrote CSS 3 years ago." And I presented this talk for the first and only time at CSS Day in 2023. And I talk about how I began styling websites using presentational elements like the font tag, for example, and presentational attributes like BG color. And then I also mentioned some of my biggest milestones in the following 20 years or so. You know, stuff like media queries and add font face and gradients. And I also talk about the present. And I even try to predict the future, or at least I give an outlook for the future. I claim that many of the things that we have in CSS now will change the way we think about CSS and the way we write CSS significantly, completely. The thing is, that was 2 years ago and nothing has changed, at least for me, because I haven't had the chance yet to put all those things into practice. I didn't have the right project. And this is why I decided to just create my own project and take all the things I was talking about and put them into action and realize them in a project, because the future is now. And in this talk, I present my learnings. So I will share with you what I've learned by using all the new stuff in CSS on a real project. And I localized 5 main areas that I want to focus on. The first one is reset style sheets. Then we have structure and organization, scalability, customization, and componentization. So those are the 5 areas that we'll be looking at today. But before I start, I should probably introduce myself like Eminem did in his song "Hi, My Name Is" from the Slim Shady LP released in 1999. In this song, they use a sample from the song "I Got That" by Labry Sifri, released in 1975, and this is how it sounds like. So, hi, my name is Manuel MATUZOVIĆ. I'm a front-end developer, consultant, teacher, accessibility auditor, and book author from Austria. I'm specialized in HTML, CSS, and web accessibility. And yeah, I also published a book, or at least, no, I published it, I wrote it, they published it last year. And you can even get a copy in the lounge if you want to. There's some left, and my handwriting is horrible, but if you want me to sign it, I'm happy to write whatever you want. Last year, this year in London, someone asked me to insult them. I was like, okay, I can do that, asshole. Okay, so now let's get back to the main topic. The first area I was looking at was reset style sheets. I haven't been using reset style sheets for at least 5 years, probably more, because I just don't see the point of reset style sheets. anymore, at least. There used to be a time when they made a lot of sense because the browser landscape was much more diverse, and also browsers rendered HTML pages very differently by default. Eric Meyer famously created the first popular Reset style sheet, Reset CSS, where he takes all kinds of elements on a page and resets stuff like margin and padding, or it takes lists and removes the list styling. There was another one that was quite popular, which is Normalized CSS by Nicholas Gallagher. He takes a gentler approach. He doesn't necessarily just reset, but actually normalize styles across different browsers. And that was super useful and made a lot of sense for me. The thing is, that was a long time ago, especially in web years, and both style sheets solved problems that we don't have anymore today, or at least most of them. But there are still modern Reset style sheets. People still write Reset style sheets. And for example, there is the new Reset CSS by Ilya Schechter. And he takes a very interesting approach because he just takes most of the elements on the page, uses the all property, and sets it to unset, which defaults to either the inherited property, if it's an inheritable property, or the initial value as defined in the spec, which is pretty wild, but you know, if it works for him and other people, it's okay, I guess. But there are also other modern Reset style sheets that use a different approach. For example, there's a more modern Reset, CSS Reset by Andy Bell. And when I was looking at Andy's Reset style sheet and also other similar style sheets, I realized that for them it's less about resetting or normalizing, it's more about improving the defaults that we have today. So this is the first area where I'm challenging my usual approaches. I decided, okay, I want to figure out if maybe in 2025 Reset style sheets are actually something that I want to use. If maybe they're useful, especially with modern CSS. By the way, I know that some people don't like the term modern CSS. I don't really know why. I didn't care researching it, why people don't like it. For me, it's just, you know, all the new stuff that we have in CSS in the past, I would say 5 years or so, or at least starting with Interop 2022. All right, so here's how my Reset style sheet looks like. I have some of the, you know, well-established basic stuff, like I'm using the traditional box model here. But let's look at the modern CSS stuff. I know this looks super wild, but what I'm doing here is actually pretty, I don't know, important for me at least. If by default you have a label element and then you following this label element, you have an input field, it looks like this. You can see horizontally, the input field is next to the label. But I would claim that in, I don't know, 95% of cases, that's not what you want. You probably want your label to be above your input field. Because we all know that's better for UX and accessibility, and usually it's also better for the design. And also, if you want your label next to your input field horizontally, then you're probably going to wrap it in a div anyways and use Flexbox, whatever, to align it properly. So what this rule does is, I'm saying, select all the label elements on the page that are followed, so that they have a next element sibling that is either an input field, a select, or a text area, and it excludes radio boxes and radio buttons and checkboxes, and then it sets display block, so it looks like this. And this is for me a much better default. That's what I want in all of my projects. Another thing that I'm doing is the following. When you open a dialog on a page, the dialog element, it just appears, and when you close it, it disappears. There is no fade in and fade out, there is no transition whatsoever. And it makes sense because the dialog is hidden by default. That's display none, and you can't animate display none. Or at least until recently that wasn't possible. Now we can do that. So in our transition property, we transition transform or opacity, like I'm doing here, for example. And then we also transition display, but now we add the allow discrete keyword, which allows the animation of discrete properties like display. Nothing will change. The animation of display doesn't change anything, but now we can at least transition the opacity, even though the element is display none. And then we do the same for the overlay property, which is the backdrop. So we can now also animate the backdrop with the dialog. This is for the fade in, fade out, and for the fade in, we have to take an extra step. We have to use the add starting style, add rule, to define a starting style, because by default the dialog is hidden, and we can't just transition something that's hidden. So we have to define a starting style, which in this case is opacity 0. And that's it. At least for the modern stuff, there's much more in my style sheet, but we want to focus on the modern CSS stuff. And I also put it online. I created a website. It's Focus to Dev with a K because all the good domain names are gone. And there I put the reset style sheet, and also you have a breakdown of all the different properties. The website doesn't, it kind of looks like a website, but it also looks like it's broken or under construction because it is under construction. Like it's a placeholder for a website. I just focused on the document here. You have a breakdown of all the elements. You have most elements in HTML in a list. You can click them, and then you can compare how it looks like with my style sheet and also how it looks like with the default user agent style sheets, or you can compare it to Ellard's ones or Andy's, whatever. If you have a reset style sheet that you want me to add, then just contact me and I will add it to the list so we have a comparison of all the different style sheets. This is online. It's also on GitHub, so you can contribute, you can file bugs, and so on. And please just understand that some of the things are very opinionated, of course. I just hope that I didn't make a big mistake like Lil Wayne did this year when he published his new album, The Carter 6, where he decided to cover Weezer. Content warning, if you're sensitive to horrible music, cover your ears. This is so horrible, especially if you know the original, which is Island in the Sun from the Green album released in 2001. Much, much better. All right, the next big topic for me was structure and organization. For the most part of my career, I followed an approach very similar to Harry Roberts' It's CSS. So you have this representation of this concept with, by this inverted pyramid, and the idea is at the beginning of your CSS file or at your CSS files, you have very generic stuff. So for example, if you're using something like SAS, the preprocessor SAS, then you have your mixins and functions and whatever you can do in SAS. It's been a while, I don't remember anymore. So you have your very general site-specific stuff, and then it gets more specific, so maybe page-specific. Then you have your universal selectors, tag selectors, and then at some point classes, attributes, and maybe IDs, and then finally very specific stuff like utility classes where you use important. So as your file progresses, the specificity gets higher in your document. And the idea is that by doing that, like by starting very general with very low specificity and getting higher as you progress, you avoid specificity problems in your CSS. And that makes a lot of sense. This concept is great. I've been following it for years, but the problem is it's just a concept. So there's nothing that will enforce these rules. There's nothing that will make sure that one group or one segment in your pyramid will always override the other one. So if for some reason you decide to put an ID selector somewhere at the very beginning, it will probably mess with your specificity, with the specificity of your CSS. That was a problem. Now, as you probably all know, it's not a problem anymore because now we have cascade layers. Cascade layers now provide an official, proper way of grouping rules and or layering groups, and a layer-defined layer later in your document will override a layer defined earlier. So now we have something that actually enforces these rules. And for my project, I wanted to come up with a structure that will work for this project, but also for any project that I will be working on, no matter the size of the website. So for a smaller website, but also one that gets larger. And I came up with this. I defined 4 main layers: core, third-party, components, and utility. The core layer is split up into 3 more layers: reset, tokens, and base. Reset is for your reset style sheet. So this is where I put my reset style sheet, which, by the way, I named it UA+, User Agent Plus. And then I have one for tokens and one for base styles. You probably don't need that. I just find it a bit cleaner and tidier if you have one dedicated place for your design tokens and one for your base styles. Then I have a third-party layer, which is split up in 2 layers. One for the import, so this is where you would import your, I don't know, Bootstrap CSS or your Prism CSS or whatever you want to import. And then I have a dedicated layer for overrides. So if there's something that you want to change or override in your third-party styles, then you just use this layer and you can make sure that you can easily override whatever they're writing, even if they're using selectors with a very high specificity. So you don't just put these overrides anywhere. There's a dedicated place, so you always know where to find overrides. Then I have my component layer for components, one sub-layer for the base styling. So this is where your, I don't know, card selector would be, and then you have one for variations where your card large and small and so on are, so that they always override and you don't have to think about specificity. Yeah, so this is the base. This is what defines my CSS boilerplate, and it looks like it's not that much, like 4 short lines, but I spent months thinking about that. There's one more thing. Here's how I import my UA plus style sheet. So I import it directly into the reset layer within the core layer, and then I always have a visually hidden class, because usually we need that if you want to make stuff accessible. Here's an example how a component looks like. So this will be a dedicated file, my card CSS. Here I call the components layer and the base layer and the variations layer, base for the base styles and variations for things that I want to change. And what's great about that isn't just that it enforces these rules, that it gives us more power to work or deal with the cascade, but it also allows me to split up my CSS into multiple files, and I don't have to worry how they're put together. It just doesn't matter. Because in the very first line, we have already established the order of layers. So these lines, add layer core, third-party components, utility, defines that third-party will always override core, components will always override third-party, and utility will always override all the others. Except when you're using important, but that's a different story. But now, if you use components in your card CSS, you're not redefining it, you're just reusing it. So here's how my inverted pyramid looks like. I have core, third-party, components, utility, pretty much the same thing that Harry did, just without the SAS stuff. And here it is with sublayers. This is also online on focus.dev. You see the code, and I also wrote an FAQ with questions that I had when I wrote this. So yeah, you can check it out and learn about cascade layers and how I'm using that and why I made certain decisions. Yeah, and it's also on GitHub, and you can contribute, and there are some additional resources. All right, so we have reset style sheets, we have structure and organization, and now we should move on to the next episode, which is a song by Dr. Dre, released in 1999 on the album 2001. In this song, they use a sample from the song "The Edge" by David McCallum, released in 1967. It's so hard to tell if you're enjoying it as much as I did when I prepared it. Like, I'm not sure, like, why is he playing music? Please just talk about CSS. I first picked the samples and then I added just some slides with CSS. It was more about the music for me. Okay. The next thing I wanted to find out is if there's any way to improve the resilience of my CSS. Like, I wanted to be really resilient. I wanted to work it at any size, like I said. One of my clients is the city of Vienna for a long time now, and I created the concept for the new pattern library, and I also wrote a good part of it. And the way that we designed it is wild. Like, we use native HTML and native CSS, which is different, probably. And we also use JavaScript, and we use it with web components. And as you can imagine, we are big fans of progressive enhancement. So our websites, our pages work with HTML only, and they also look nice with only CSS. So if you don't add JavaScript, if you don't use your web components, it all looks fine and works fine. Everything is still accessible. If you decide to go for web components, then we make stuff dynamic, then we have reactivity, we fetch content, and do stuff with JavaScript where it makes sense. If someone decides to disable JavaScript in their browser, there are 4 people in Vienna, as far as I know, then it still works. It doesn't look perfect, but it still works. And this, the website, which is launching today, actually, at 10 p.m., as far as I know. We'll see if I'm going to sleep or not. This website even works without any CSS classes. So if you just take any HTML and use our CSS, it will look fine. It will actually look pretty great. And in hindsight, that was a good idea that we built it that way. So we designed it as a no-class CSS framework, because at some point, someone told me, yeah, by the way, you know that we're going to import 7,000 pages from our 20-year-old custom-made CMS into a new CMS, and we're not going to touch most of them. I was like, no, I didn't think about that. But they did, and they didn't have to do much. It just looked fine. Of course, it didn't look perfect, but it looked fine because we have a very detailed base style sheet. So everything works without classes. If you want to use classes, you can, but you don't really need to. Like, we have like maybe, I don't know, a couple of utility classes, but that's pretty much it. The HTML does all the heavy lifting, and then we have web components that, of course, they come with CSS. Anyways, I decided that I'm going to use that in my project as well because it worked so well. And here are some of the highlights. One of the things that I'm doing is I'm selecting all the headings, and I'm using the text wrap property, and I'm setting it to the value balance. This is a tiny thing, but it ensures that more balanced lines in multi-line headings. Here's an example. So here's a heading that spans 2 lines. Without the setting and with the setting, you can see how it's more balanced. So the first heading just fills up the entire space, and the second heading breaks at a certain point so that both lines are more balanced. This is just a little thing. Another thing that I was looking at was headings and font sizes, because usually when someone gives me a design in Figma or earlier in InVision or Sketch and even earlier in InDesign, I just usually, yeah, that happened. I just take the font size, I copy and paste it, and that's it. And if you look at it, there is maybe a system, but yesterday we learned that there are actually systems, people use scales, but I don't see it, like the code doesn't reflect whether or not there is a system in place. And yesterday, when Matthias talked about fluid type and type scales, I was like, oh, fuck, no, please don't, because I have a really big section in my talk about type scales, and I was like, oh no, if he is going to tell the same things that I plan to say, it's going to be pretty boring for you. But luckily, we're kind of talking about the same topic, but from a different perspective, maybe. And if you take Matthias' ideas and my ideas, and you marry them, put them together, I don't know, it will be fantastic, your code and yeah, your solution for fluid, accessible, whatever, type. Anyways, I didn't know much about type scales. I just went on DuckDuckGo, I put in type scale, CSS, and this was probably the first site that I found. So I don't know if this is the best one. I know that Utopia is great, but yeah, I found this one, and you see they define a base font size. They have different scales, like this one, major third, which is a scale of 1.26. And then you have headings that look differently depending on the scale that you want to use. So I was like, okay, let's use this system. So I just copied the values here, and now I'm using 51, 40, and 32. Cool, I have a system now, but still the code doesn't reflect the system. Like I don't know where this is coming from. So I went back to the website and I wanted to understand it. I was really bad at maths in school, actually, at any subject, but especially at maths. But I still figured out, my super brain was able to figure out how this works. So they start with 16, then they take the scale, they multiply it with 16, and then you get 20. And then you multiply 20 with the scale again, they get 25, and so on. This is how it works, super easy. And I was like, okay, I can do that in CSS. So I created a custom property for the scale, one for the base font size. I set the H6 to the base font size, so this is just 16 pixels. The H5 is the H6 times the scale, the H4 is the H5 times the scale, and so on. That's it, that's all you need. But I don't like that. I don't like it for 2 reasons. The first reason is I don't like the referencing. I find it hard to read and to understand. And second of all, I don't like the repetition. So here's a different way of writing the same thing. You can see H6 is just the base, H5 is base times the scale, H4 is base times the scale, H3 is base times the scale, and I was looking at that and I saw a pattern. It's hard to find, but I saw a pattern. And I was like, there must have been some dead dude who came up with a formula for that that I can use. And I also know that there are trigonometric functions in CSS, so I went on MDN and I just clicked random links because I don't know what a sine is and what, I don't remember anymore. And I clicked some of them, and then I saw the math method. And it says the power method is a static method that returns the value of a base raised to a power. And that sounded like what I wanted. So I used it, and it works. You can see my h6 is now the base times the pow method. It takes two values, the base and an exponent. And 0 basically just gives me 16 pixels. If I use it on the h5, I set the exponent to 1, which gives me 20, 2 gives me 25, and so on. This is much better now, but I still have a lot of repetition. So I do this. I select all the headings, I set the font size once, and instead of defining a static exponent, I use a custom property. So you can see now there's this dash dash exponent custom property. If you don't set it, it's 0, which means that by default it resets the font size of all headings to 16 pixels. And if I set an exponent, it uses a different number for my scale. You can see the h5 has exponent 1, h4 has exponent 2, and so on. I know that looks super strange. It's like very unfamiliar and strange to not just use the font size property and set it, but just define a valueless, like a unitless value. That seems strange, but this is what that's part of the exercise. Like I want to challenge my usual approaches. But what is nice about that is that now I'm forced kind of to use the system. I'm not just randomly saying, okay, 18 pixels here, 22 pixels here. I have to use a number from the type scale. And this is really cool because it enforces the system very similar to what the cascade layers do with our inverted pyramids. I'm really happy with that, but then I realized, this only works for headings. What if I wanted to apply it to the entire website? Could that work? So instead of selecting all the headings, I'm selecting all the elements. Now, please don't try this at home. Or actually, no, try it at home. Don't try it at work because this can be problematic. First of all, it resets the font size of all elements on the page, and it also messes with inheritance. So you probably don't want to use it. It works for me. Like I didn't have any problems, at least for the website that I built, and it kind of makes sense for me. I just use the dash dash exponent, and I use a number that fits, that I like. Yeah. I don't know, it's cool. Now I'm forced to use my system. I can use it anywhere where I want. I created a custom class here, a big class and a small class. Big has a really large value, small has a negative value, which also works, so it's value less than 16 pixels. Yeah, like I said, now I'm forced to use my system, but what if I don't want to? Like, what if I want to use 2 rem somewhere, or 80% for a font size? Okay, now I split up the formula in 2 more custom properties. It looks bad, I know, but it's not that complicated. You have the font size property, and the value of the font size property is dash dash font size. So if you define dash dash font size, for example here I'm setting 2 rem, then that's your font size. Okay, nothing special. You just define a custom property instead of defining it directly. If you don't define it, it falls back to the formula, and then you can use the system. That's it. Here's how it looks like in action. So I have 2 range sliders here, one for the scale, it goes from 1 to 2, and one for the font size, which goes from 10 to 20, I think. And we saw that, or a very similar thing in Matthias' talk yesterday. You can see how the hierarchy changes and how it looks like with different font sizes. And you can see how big gets really big, small gets small, and custom always stays the same, because for custom, we are using dash dash font size, which is just 2 rem and nothing within our type scale. I don't know what you think, again, but I like it. I think it's super cool. It's at least worth exploring. So if you really want to stick to your type scale, to that system, that's one way of doing it. And yesterday, once again, I saw Matthias' talk, and then I was like, fuck again. He's talking about color. Please don't talk about relative color syntax. Please don't, and he's talking about relative color syntax. So I have exactly the same slides. My just don't look as nice, but I want to tell you the same thing, and I'm just going to repeat it because maybe someone wasn't there yesterday, so I will explain what I did here. And also I'm doing it to emphasize that what Matthias told you was actually a good idea, because I'm doing it as well. All right, so for the longest part of my professional CSS career, I've been just using hex values. I didn't know anything about color, and I didn't care. Like, you would give me a design, I'd take a color picker, I picked this thing, I use it in my code, that's it. I didn't care much about color, but that changed because Mark, is Mark anywhere? I wanted to do a really good joke. I want to say, oh, hi, Mark, if you know the reference, maybe? Okay. All right. He invited me to speak at Beyond Tellerrand in Berlin, and yeah, I did. So I had to learn something about color and color theory, and I gave this talk called Color in CSS, or How I Learned to Disrespect Tennis. And there's always something random in my talks. And in preparation for this talk, I learned a lot about color theory, so I know still not enough, but much more than before. And I also know how to use it in CSS. I know so much more about color, but I still fucking hate tennis. And what I'm doing now is, instead of using hex, I'm using OKLCH. And Matthias explained why it has gives us access to more colors, it's perceptually uniform, and also we have more flexibility to work with it and the different values. It's easier to manipulate colors. And I also have my color scale. I'm referencing the base color. I'm taking the chrome and the hue value, the chroma and the hue value, and I'm only changing the lightness, and this gives me this, I wanted to say nice color scale, but it's not a nice color scale, it's a color scale. It's not nice because if you look at the lightest values, they should be much lighter. They should be very close to light. And if you paid attention yesterday, in Matthias' slides, there were also some colors that should have been whiter than they are, because there is a major, I would call it, okay, browser vendors call it a feature, I call it a bug. If you want to know why, then talk to me in the break, during the break, or just watch my talk at Beyond Tellerrand. You can even take it a step further if you want to. What I'm doing here is I'm defining a base hue, so not a base color, a base hue. And the second color is based on the hue of the first color, and the third color is based on the hue of the first color as well. And if you change just the hue, you can see how all the others are changing as well with the base hue. I don't know if that's useful, but maybe you can try it out. I don't know, could be. All right, there are many more rules in my style sheet, but this is how it looks like. So I have styles for most elements on the page, like paragraphs, headings, lists, and so on. Figure element, block quote, code, a lot of inline styles as well. Text level elements. I even style RP and RT. I'm not sure if I really know what I'm doing here, but it looks good. Embedded content, tables, forms, and so on. So you can see most elements on the page are styled. That's great, but it only includes styling for elements, of course, because that's what it is. It's a base style sheet. And you can see at the very top, there's a logo and a list, and that's a header and a nav element. But it doesn't look like a navigation and the main, like a header and the main navigation of your site, because it would be a dangerous assumption to style a header element just because it's in the context of the body. Because maybe you have two header elements, which you shouldn't, but maybe you have. Maybe in your header element you have multiple nav elements, and then they would all look the same. So it would be dangerous to just assume that you are following the same structure that I do in my HTML. So of course I'm not styling that. But at the same time, I know how my HTML looks like. I know that I always use a header element, I have a main element, a footer element, then I have a nav, and so on. I know how I structure my stuff, and it would be great if my HTML would look a little nicer. If also some certain things are styled properly, even though I'm not using any classes. So what I need is, I need magic. And yeah, I stole some of the smashing graphics. I'm sorry, because there was so much white space, and I just wanted to fill it. So I just, stole it. So what I need is magic, and I added magic to my project by selecting the root element, and I said -- magic to true. And now, this is how the page looks like. So if I decide to use magic, the header will look like a header, and then main navigation will look like a main navigation, and certain elements on the page will also look differently. Here's how it looks like in the background. I'm using container style queries. I'm querying the -- magic property. If it's true, then I'm changing certain things about the header, the styling, and so on. So it looks like it's centered, and the header looks like a header, and so on. And you can see I'm not redeclaring regular properties. I'm only using custom properties. This is another thing that I'm doing. I'm going all in on custom properties. I have hundreds of them here. Right now, I have 3 settings. I have magic that I can turn on. I have the layout, which I can switch between horizontal or vertical. And then I have the font stack. By default, it's transitional. And there are many other font stacks I'm using. This is based on modern font stacks. You may have heard of that site. I'm using some of their font stacks. And yeah, here's the codes where I'm deciding which font stack to use. And I included that because it looks like a switch statement almost, because I'm nesting it in the body and I'm saying, if it's this value, please use this font stack and do that and so on. So here's a variation of the same page. I set magic to true, I changed the layout, and I also changed the font stack. And you see that it's the same project, but it has a different vibe. Like it looks differently just by changing the layout and the font stack. yeah, only 2 properties. But I have more, of course, more stuff that I'm using directly. So yeah, I can change anything I want, like the maximum inline size of the page, the padding, and so much more. The colors for links, font weights for headings. There are a lot of properties that I can change. Just like Anna and Matthias, I also have a website. The difference is mine looks like shit. And so I wanted to change that. And what I did is I took my website, I removed all the CSS, I configured it. As you can see, no custom CSS. All I'm doing is I'm changing custom properties. I'm changing colors. I'm changing the layout, the font weight for the heading 2 and 3 and so on. And now my website looks like this. And I made one tiny change in the header in the HTML. I didn't touch the HTML otherwise. So yeah, if you know the original one, you see similarities, but then again, it also has its own vibe. And yeah, it looks like I'm soon going to publish my website. My redesign website. No, it probably won't happen in the next 3 years, but we'll see. Yeah. So yeah, spoiler, of course, I want to release this publicly. I want to give you the same thing that I'm using so you can also customize it. I really want to make it easy for you to style your pages and configure them. I want to make it easy like Big Crit did on his album Crit is here, released in 2019 with the song Make It Easy. Crit's version is fire, but I like the original better, which is Make It Easy on Yourself by the Walker Brothers, released in 1965 on the album Take It Easy with the Walker Brothers. You know, I'm not listening to that song at home. I listen in the car and at full volume, and the windows are open, and I'm driving through the city just screaming, make it easy on yourself. For the music nerds, yes, I know this is not the original. This is the original is by Jerry Butler, released in 1962. Okay, I didn't come up with that on my own. Of course, there's a much smarter woman who came up with that, the amazing Leah Beru. And in a talk at CSS Day, she talked about custom properties and how at some point they will replace presentational attributes on components. So instead of using your color attribute on a web component, you will use a custom property. And here's an example. Here's the mother of all demos, a card. We have a heading here, some content, and an image. By default, this is how it looks like. So you have image, heading, content. And if I want a larger version of that, I just set -- card size to L. And I'm using a style attribute here. And then we have a larger variation of the same card. Or if I want a different layout, I add -- card axis is X instead of Y. And then you can see how the image is on the start side and the content is on the end side. I'm using the style attribute, but of course you can still use classes. There's nothing wrong with using classes. You can write your custom class and configure your components. But the big difference here is I'm not just redeclaring any random properties. I'm configuring my components. So again, we have a system. I'm working with the system. I'm only changing what I have provided that can be changed. Again, working with classes is fine, but there are more advantages to using custom properties. Let's say you have a bunch of cards and they have the default size, but you want a smaller size for your cards. What you can do is you put a class on each card, or a custom property. Or you can put it on the parent element and the cards will inherit from the parent element because custom properties are inheritable. So if you want all cards in a container to have a certain styling, you just put the custom property on the container, which is really cool. Another advantage is that custom properties, instead of classes, allow us to write drier code. So let's say we have a card, we have a maximum inline size of 13 pixels RAM, and then at a certain screen size, we change that to 23 RAM. Fine. But what if I want to use that same value in a dedicated class, like I have a card large class, and I want to use the same thing, so I have to repeat my styles. And of course, this is not just one property usually, but I don't know, 5, 6 properties. So you have to repeat yourself. And if you make changes, you have to do it in 2 places. We don't have mixins yet, so we have this repetition. But you can also do it differently. Instead of using the media query and changing the value directly, you use a container-side query, and you say, if card size is large, then set the value to 23. And then in your media query, you set card size to large. And if you want to reuse it somewhere else, you also set card size to large. And you can use it anywhere in your page. It will always use this value. So now you only have to change your styles in one dedicated place. That's it. And it's pretty cool if you ask me. The only problem is it's not available in Firefox right now. But I think there's someone in the audience who recently started working at Firefox. And maybe they can help us push this topic. Maybe they can help us push it real good, like Salt and Pepper did. That wasn't the end. I thought that you wanted me to stop. Okay, because yeah, okay, 2 more minutes. So in this song, they sample several other songs, and one of them is "Keep on Pushing" by Cold Kitchen, released in 1977, and this is how it sounds like. Okay, so everything that I showed you is online on a website, olliecss.com. I actually planned to release it properly for this event, but I didn't manage to build it in time. So right now, it's online, you can check it out. I just didn't want to disappoint you, so I published the code, it's on a website. The website is also, we'll see there are some scrolling bugs and so on, but it's there, you can check out the code, you can try it out. But please just keep in mind it's not production ready yet, but you can check it out. And if you're thinking, why Ollie CSS? That's the name of one of my daughters. I have 3. So if I build a project for one of them, of course I will have to build 2 more projects, because otherwise I would have problems at home. So the second project will be Philly CSS, which will be a component library, an accessible component library based on Ollie CSS. And the third project will be Honey, a web component library based on Ollie and Philly. So I'm actually doing the thing that Brett told us not to do. I'm building the next design system. But the thing is, OpenUI is not quite ready already. Yeah, not quite ready yet. And also most component libraries that you find online are horrible in terms of accessibility. Like I've tested a lot of them, and it's hard for them to keep up, which makes sense. It's open source and they move very fast. It's hard to keep up. And with this, I plan to test it regularly and also make the whole testing process more transparent. Yes, that's it for me. So if you want to, please check it out, give me feedback, contribute, and also please challenge your typical approaches that you have. See if you can change something in your CSS, if you can improve something, something that will help you make better products for your users. The tools aren't holding us back. We heard that yesterday in Matthias' talk. So please try these new things and try to create better products for your users. The slides are online. And yeah, thank you so much.
So, Manuel, we have some questions, if you don't mind joining me. It seems like I'm, I have this moment that like this has happened to me before. We have a question that is Tailwind. Mm-hmm. And specifically a couple of them. Boris is wondering, in most of our enterprise and mid-sized customer projects, we use 99.9% Tailwind plus Purge CSS.
I'm really sorry.
This is the first half of the statement.
Okay.
The second half of the statement, are you ready for this? Do you see any valid reason to know or even use deep-level CSS knowledge today?
Yes.
Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so I mark it as answered. Okay. Then we have another one from Shimon. Did you just make Tailwind CSS, but just with CSS? Not an insult. I actually really like it with custom properties.
No. I'm still writing regular CSS. I'm taking advantage of everything that CSS offers in the cascade. I'm just making it more configurable. I'm just taking a different approach at writing it, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a lot of custom properties.
It is.
Okay.
But it's
that's not a judgment. It's
no. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. Maybe like it's just a side project, and maybe it's complete nonsense, and I'm going to throw it away. That can also happen. But I made these claims 2 years ago, but I just needed something that I can use to prove that I'm wrong or that I'm not wrong, and then we'll see. Also, you don't have to use the custom properties. You can leave them as it is.
Yeah.
You just have the options. You can use them and change them, or you just don't touch them. It's fine.
Yeah, I think like the first time when I saw mathematical functions in CSS, I thought, why?
Yeah.
I just couldn't understand. And of course, now that I mean, if I think about repetition, like this is kind of nice. But also when you think about motion, right, where you might want to have something like that we saw yesterday in Matthias' talk, now it kind of makes sense. That's really interesting to see. There is a question from Leonard. Leonard is wondering, because whenever you type in your code editor, you get autocomplete suggestions on CSS. How can you make your CSS variables or custom properties discoverable for your code editor so that autocomplete works?
I don't know.
Okay.
Depends on the code editor, I guess.
Yeah, but I don't know if there is a simple way of doing it.
I really don't know. No,
Yeah.
honestly.
Okay, it's going fast. Okay, Sasha is
I
wondering.
have to make up for the extra 8 minutes that I needed.
Okay. How can your methodology be applied to legacy projects? How would you tackle refactoring things that are 5, 10, or even 15 years old? And in that case, how would you account for unwanted side effects?
Did you skip Anna's talk yesterday?
I did not.
No, but it was about refactoring. I don't know. It's. I mean, we have a dedicated talk to the entire topic. It's pretty hard, especially with stuff like cascade layers, because it also depends a lot on which browsers you have to support, because with cascade layers, it's not like you can just progressively enhance and use it here and there. It's all in or nothing, because you either use cascade layers or you don't. Mixing them with unlayered styles gets messy, because unlayered styles always have precedence over layered styles. So that's pretty tough, I guess. So the best thing you can do is to probably just opt in completely into this new system and not try to refactor, or maybe only try to refactor parts and work on a component base. But that sounds like something that's
Yeah, I think
not easy to do.
Yeah, there are many different companies trying very different approaches. Sometimes it would be like a Frankenstein model, and you would try. Yeah. Sometimes you would leave like on top of your legacy, and it's all becomes quite messy, or component by component. But that's always very fragile and tricky. It's really kind of hard to get right.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a way that you can maybe import your existing CSS into a layer, and then you have a dedicated layer for all your other layers, then you maybe have more control over it in a way.
No.
But then again, you still may have the problem with browser support.
Another question, very short. Masonry.
Sorry? Masonry, yeah.
That's all.
Masonry?
That's a question, yeah.
Yeah, I thought about that a lot, and yes.
Okay. What would be the best way to do masonry in CSS today?
Display grid template columns masonry or something like that.
But is what is supported? I'm not quite sure.
I'm not sure. Does anyone know?
Yeah? Coming soon later this year.
Okay, then wait. That's a strategy.
Okay. Fantastic. Maybe just one more question in the spirit of short questions and short answers. So is there a particular CSS feature, property, or anything that you're really looking forward to, or that you maybe would like to see, maybe it's on your wish list? Something that the web is missing, and all of us do as well.
I mean, on my list was definitely container-style queries, so that was the biggest thing for me, or one of the biggest things, the second biggest thing I would say. And the biggest thing for me was the has pseudo class. It's one of the most amazing things that we got, because it's so super powerful. And other than that, no, I'm super happy. There's so much, like it's so hard to keep up. I wrote 100 blog posts about modern CSS in 100 days, and it's still for me super hard to keep up. Like I know many things, but then there are so many other things that they're constantly shipping. And now I'm super cool with whatever we have now, and I just need the time to try all that stuff out and see how I can use it. So no, at the moment, oh yes, there's one thing, mix-ins.
Mix-ins.
Yeah.
So what happens then with SAS?
Yeah. And they're working on it. There is a huge GitHub issue that you can check out where they're discussing, I think, even already the details.
Yeah, we even have, I think it's coming up, if statements.
Yeah, if statements as well.
Yeah. So if you're looking for more very short answers to your very detailed questions, you can also find Manuel in.
I don't want to
That's okay.
waste people's time, you know. But if you want mix-ins and if statements, you kind of can use container-style queries in a way.
True. Yeah. So if you have more questions, you can also find Manuel in the fireplace. Thank you so much for being with us, Manuel.
Thank you.